it's still kind of up in the air. What is the best course of action? New York.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. If you have any requests, I can't dance on attack, but I could try. Just let me know. I'm a $20 whore. I'm cheap. I'll do as you ask for the most part. I'll see how far I'm willing to stretch.
Me, not so much.
No. Jen always relies on me to basically put myself out there.
You're willing to do that nonsense. I'm not willing to do that.
Hey, that's how we get the big bucks. That's a big start. Remember, if you are so inclined, go to patreon.com/generational change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. It does seem like our channel is picking up some steam.
A little bit. And guys, if you haven't hit the like button and you're not subscribed, please do that too. That's helpful. And it's free.
Yeah. Just think that doesn't cost anything. And then, of course, when our live stream finishes, you can go in and leave a comment. That also helps boost the algorithm. Make sure you're checking out our clips. There's a lot of different ways that you can contribute, even if you're not able to donate. That is something that I think a lot of people misunderstand. This idea that I can't contribute in other ways. No, you definitely can. There are ways to make a difference.
Honestly, people subscribing and liking is very helpful, and sharing is also good.
Yeah.
Are we talking about Syria? Are we not talking about Syria? Like, what is your thing? I see some of the things you have up there, but there are things that I was like, I don't really want to do that.
Well, this is a great way to close the show. So let's talk about Syria, Jen.
What about Syria? Does anybody know what's going on in Syria? Is everybody aware of what's going on in Syria?
I am not very well versed. That's why I defer to you, because
this is going to be just the general sort of interpretation of events, and we will get more details on this with expert people. We are going to have Matthew Ho on next week, and he is definitely infinitely more experted at this topic. But essentially,
I do bet you that our lovely guest on Thursday night, Margaret Kimberly, our friend of the show, will be making her.
Oh, she'll also have plenty to say about Syria also.
100%.
Just people that are way more learned than me. But the gist of what's happening in Syria is our Groundhog Day regime change 101. So essentially, we are currently right now, and by we, I mean American Empire. Okay, you could put it on. It's technically, I think it's through Turkey, but it's empire. We are arming and supporting the rebels. Now, normally that would sound good because normally I would be supporting rebels. Rebel sounds good. However, in Syria, oh, hello to the Netherlands. In Syria, the rebels that we are funding are, I forget if it's Al-Qaeda or ISIS. It is a terrorist group.
Al-Qaeda.
It is Al-Qaeda. Okay, so I just know it's a terrorist group that we have sought to eradicate, and now we are providing them with the means to revolt in Syria. And why? Why do we want to have? What do you think it is?
It's just so interesting how everything comes full circle after all these years. Why did we have to go over there, Jen? Why did we have to go to Afghanistan and Iraq?
The thing about what's going on in Syria, and again, this is something we'd have to do a real deep dive into, but just to give people a general idea of what's going on right now, is they're fighting over, and when I say they, I mean empires, are fighting over where the location of this oil line, this pipeline, is going to go. And it's going to basically go in one of two ways. Yes, that is, I know, I'm aware of that. Unfortunately, I'm so much more focused on Western Asia than Eastern Asia or Mid-Asia. And I'm just like, but can I finish talking about Syria without you? Please. You do this, you get me so distracted.
Yeah.
So for people just to understand, ultimately, at the end of the day, this is over where the location of a pipeline is going to go. That's what this is about. I don't care what they say it's about. This is where it's about. So this pipeline in question will either ultimately end up in, I believe it's Syria or Turkey. And so obviously, if it ends up in a place like Syria, then that gives people and countries like Iran and Russia control over something that we should, of course, have total control over. Whereas if Turkey has it, meaning American Empire, then that would be within our control. So we are fighting in Syria. We are trying to unlodge again in a place where we were told to leave. And yet I don't understand why we're still there. And as far as I'm concerned, if the Syrians wanted to start bombing American locations in their country, I wouldn't even have a problem with this. I think that basically we're doing the same thing in Syria that we do all over the place. It's a regime. We're trying to enact a regime change war to get control so we can have the pipeline. That's what this is about.
Just as
and again, we'll have to do a much, follow the oil. We'll have to do a much deeper dive. I do not understand all the details as far as like the factions, and I am by no means an Assad apologist or whatever.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not. But I do know.
And Jen, if you are an Assad apologist, who gives a fuck?
Yeah, well, I'm not an anybody apologist, but what I do know is Syria is a sovereign nation that we are illegally in, have been asked repeatedly to leave by said sovereign nation, and we refuse to do so. So that is something in and of itself that has been infuriating to me for years. Just that. So the fact that we are part of, and of course, again, it's going to look like it's Turkey, but it's us. And so, yeah, we're arming essentially a terrorist faction to win over pipeline of the oil. That's what's happening.
Well, just as I said at the beginning of the live stream, I say it now as we come full circle. It's the same thing about Ukraine. It's the same thing about Syria. It's the same thing about Iraq. The Middle East, despite the fact that it is a desert, is a very exceedingly rich natural resource region.
That's why they never allowed it to become what it was always meant to be, which would have been Greater Syria. And had it been that, it would basically be a chunk of Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine would be Greater Syria. And that whole region would actually have control of its own resources. And the British and the French couldn't possibly allow that. So they had to carve it up into little kingdoms and put their little kingdom heads, their little tools in charge of places like Saudi Arabia and Jordan and this stuff. So if they had allowed Greater Syria to be Greater Syria, we wouldn't own energy like we do. Like it would be an entirely different universe. And so we have to keep all of those separate. But at the end of the day, Lebanese, Syrians, Iraqis, Jordanians, that is a group of people. That is a group of people, and we can make them all separate. Yeah.
Jay's right.
Yeah.
And ultimately, any one country, I always refer it back to Gaddafi. The worst thing, I mean, listen, there were a lot of terrible things that Obama did during his presidency. And I don't even necessarily put it as his feet as much as I put it at Hillary Clinton's. But what they did to Libya is one of the biggest war crimes this world has ever seen. No one is here to say that Gaddafi was a great guy, but there is no question that he loved it. You know, it's kind of like what James was saying earlier. I can accept if my leader is corrupt, if he's taking care of his people.
I've said that before too.
That's what Gaddafi was doing. He was corrupt, but he was taking care of his people, and he was trying to get his country off of the petrodollar and onto their own gold standard. And
can't have that.
Not acceptable.
No. Well, this is why we've been constantly trying to coup Venezuela back to Chavez. Like, I mean, we cannot allow all of the pariah countries to us are simply countries that don't want to trade on the US dollar. How dare some other countries want to trade in their own currency? However, what I will say about what's going on in Syria, it is definitely going to impact whether or not Russia will ever allow Turkey into BRICS. I think what Turkey's participation in Syria right now could be what prevents it from being part of BRICS, which definitely also benefits the United States. So us like engaging in some sort of military situation where us and Turkey are, buddy, that's just another, it's sort of like camaraderie building, if you will. It's team building. It's a team building exercise.
Well, that's also the issue here.
It sounded so what did that say before? That it sounded complicated? This is one instance where it really sounds complicated.
Well, Donald James.
Yeah, there are a lot of different plots. But I will say there's a lot of different factions. But at the end of the day, it comes down to American empire versus not American empire. and control.
So according to Colanello, Turkey's in NATO, hence they can't be in BRICS.
Yes,
is that
they
true?
can. No, that's not true, because I believe isn't Egypt in NATO? Is Egypt in NATO? No, Egypt's not in NATO. Well, I don't know I don't know if there's another NATO country in BRICS, but I don't know that they can't be.
Well, here's where
that's what I'm saying.
Here's where we're going to find out what the future is going to look like very, very quickly, and just how committed our saber rattling under Trump is really going to look like, because he's wasting no time, Jen. The idea that the BRICS countries are trying to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over. We require commitment from these countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor back any currency to replace the mighty US dollar, or they will face 100% tariffs and should expect to say goodbye to selling into the wonderful US economy. They can go find another sucker. There is no chance that the BRICS will replace the US dollar in international trade, and any country that tries should wave goodbye to America.
Do you, he is so fucking ignorant. Like the fact that this is our president-elect and this is something he's putting out. First of all, BRICS is not developing a uniform currency. That's not what they're doing. They don't have a currency. They're not seeking to do a currency. So the fact that he puts that out where he clearly has no concept of what BRICS is, but yes, ultimately, these are countries that want to trade amongst themselves
without having the petrodollar as the go-between.
Well, right. They want to trade in their own currencies.
Correct.
And the fact that we somehow
think that we have
the absolute
capacity to say, no, you're going to trade through us. Like, who in the fuck are you?
It's such good. And you get like Lindsey Graham talking about putting sanctions on our allies for, agreeing to arrest Netanyahu according to international law. Like these two people that you want to just keep baiting every country in the world into, by all means. But no, BRICS is not creating a uniform currency. That's not something that they've talked about. BRICS is also not anti-American. It's not anti-American and it's not anti-West. The fact that we perceive anything that isn't about us to be against us, that's our psychosis. That's a psychosis.
Yeah, it's part of the psychosis, but it's also showing the fragility of our current system and where we currently stand.
Clearly, we're insecure. That comes off as extremely insecure.